The red and white barriers lower across a country lane. The wigwag lights begin their alternating flash. A steady warning tone fills the air. You wait. A train passes through, 2 coaches, perhaps 3, and gone in seconds. The barriers lift. The lights stop. You drive on, and you do not think about it again. There are roughly 6,000 railway-level crossings scattered across England, Wales, and Scotland. Most of them you will cross without a second thought. The barriers work, the lights flash, the train passes, and you carry on with your day. But some of those crossings have histories that their quiet lanes and hedgerows do not advertise. Between the moment the lights begin to flash and the moment a train arrives, there is a window. At some crossings, that window is generous. At others, it is not. Those seconds between the lights are where people have vanished, not metaphorically. Literally. Drivers, passengers, families, school children, gone between the warning and the impact. I have gone through the Rail Accident Investigation Branch reports, the Parliamentary Inquiry records, the Office of Rail and Road Data, and the local testimonies that sit beneath the official record. These are 15 crossings, where the machinery of safety failed and the cost was measured in lives. Let us start with the one that shook the entire railway system. Hixon is a village in central Staffordshire, sitting on the West Coast Main Line between Stafford and Colwich. The crossing on Station Road connected the village to the A51. On the 6th of January 1968, a low-loader transporter carrying a 120-ton electrical transformer began to cross. It was an enormous vehicle, slow and heavy, crawling across the tracks with a police escort. The 11:30 Manchester to Euston Express was approaching. 12 coaches, 300 passengers aboard, 491 tons of train, moving at roughly 75 miles per hour. The crossing had been automated just 6 months earlier. It gave 24 seconds of warning. The low loader could not clear the crossing in 24 seconds unless it moved faster than 6 miles per hour. Nobody on the escort team knew this. Nobody had told them how the automatic system worked. 11 people died. 45 were injured. The wreckage spread across the tracks and the village road. What makes Hixon burn is that it was not the first warning. 2 years earlier, one of the same company's transporters had become stuck on an automatic crossing at Leominster. The haulage company wrote to British Railways expressing concern. The reply dismissed the problem entirely. Investigators would later describe that letter as remarkable for its arrogance and lack of insight. A full judicial inquiry followed. It was the first public inquiry into a railway accident since the Tay Bridge disaster of 1879. New signage was introduced at level crossings across Britain, known afterward as post-Hixon signs. The crossing itself was eventually replaced in 2002 by a bridge, costing £2 million. On the 50th anniversary, a memorial stone was dedicated in Hixon village churchyard. Among those present was Dennis Clews, who had been a teenager on that train travelling with his parents. Both of his parents died in the crash. He stood at the memorial 50 years later. Travelling northeast into the East Riding of Yorkshire, we reach Lockington. 4 miles north of Beverley on the Hull to Scarborough line. On the 26th of July 1986, the 9:33 passenger train from Bridlington to Kingston upon Hull struck a van on the crossing. 8 passengers on the train and 1 person in the van were killed. The train derailed, ran down the embankment, and the front vehicle jackknifed onto its side. This was an automatic open crossing. No barriers at all, only warning lights, and there had been reports before the accident that those lights were not operating correctly. The investigator concluded that the driver of the van had likely been distracted and missed the signal. But the deeper finding was more damning. The review that followed found that automatic open crossings without barriers were catastrophically dangerous. Collisions at these crossings occurred at least 20 times more frequently than at crossings fitted with half barriers under the same traffic conditions. The installation of new automatic open crossings stopped after Lockington, but the ones already built remained. Heading south into Berkshire, we find Ufton Nervet, a small village southwest of Reading. Population under 300. The crossing sat on a narrow lane connecting the village to the A4 on the Reading to Taunton line. On the 6th of November 2004, a passenger train collided with a stationary car on the crossing. The car had been parked deliberately. Brian Drysdale, a 48-year-old chef, had placed his vehicle on the tracks with the handbrake on, the engine off, and the lights extinguished. He had spoken to NHS Direct about suicidal thoughts. 7 people died, including the train driver, Stanley Martin. This alone would make Ufton Nervet one of the most significant crossings in Britain. But Ufton Nervet did not stop killing in 2004. In the 10 years that followed, 4 more fatal incidents occurred at the same crossing: 2009, 2010, 2012, 2014. 5 separate occasions on which someone died at the same set of tracks on the same quiet Berkshire lane. It took 12 years and repeated death before the crossing was finally closed. A road bridge replaced it in 2016. The memorial garden nearby carries a plaque. For all those affected, one event, many realities. Far to the north, in the very top of Scotland, Halkirk sits in Caithness on the line between Inverness and Wick. Remote country, open roads, long sightlines across the moorland. On the 29th of September 2009, a train struck a car at the Halkirk level crossing. 3 people in the car were killed: Angus and Margaret Mackay, both 81 years old, from Inverness, and Angus's brother Donald, 66, an elderly couple and a brother, driving to a family visit. The investigation found that Network Rail had not properly understood the risk at Halkirk because previous accident records had not been taken into account. Lawyers also alleged that the warning lights were impossible to see when the sun was shining directly at them. Safety barriers were finally installed at Halkirk in October 2013. A £4 million project, 4 years after 3 members of the same family died. In Essex, the commuter village of Elsenham sits on the West Anglia Main Line between Bishops, Stortford, and Cambridge. The station has a pedestrian-level crossing between the platforms. Passengers must walk across the tracks to reach the opposite side. On the 3rd of December 2005, 2 teenage girls were struck by a fast-moving train on that pedestrian crossing. Both were killed. They had purchased tickets and were walking to the opposite platform to catch their service to Cambridge. The crossing had already killed once before, in 1989. A crossing between 2 platforms. Children used it every day. Trains passed through at speed. The girls were doing exactly what the station required them to do. They were crossing because there was no other way. What connects all of these places is not geography. It is not even negligence in the way most people understand the word. It is something slower and harder to name. It is the distance between a known risk and the decision to act on it. At Hixon, the risk was identified 2 years before the disaster. At Ufton Nervet, the crossing continued to kill for a decade after the first mass casualty event. At Halkirk, the sun angle problem was known to locals long before the Mackay family drove to the crossing that morning. In each case, the information existed. The reports had been filed, the letters had been written, and then nothing happened until the next collision forced the next investigation. The pattern repeats across the network like a pulse. Warning, inaction, death, inquiry, upgrade. Then silence again until the next crossing claims its turn. It is not that the system does not learn. It learns slowly. It learns at the speed of funding cycles and infrastructure budgets and political will. And between those cycles, crossings remain open. Trains continue to run. Drivers continue to cross. The mathematics of probability ticks forward, indifferent to the lives sitting inside it. We move now from the landmark disasters to something more insidious. The crossings that follow did not trigger parliamentary inquiries. They did not make the front pages. For weeks, they killed in ones and twos, over years, quietly enough that the system did not respond, or in some cases, still has not. Barnes Green in West Sussex sits between Horsham and Pulborough, on the Arun Valley line. The crossing is on Ems Lane. On the 17th of February 2018, a Saturday morning, a 15-year-old boy and a 72-year-old man, believed to be his grandfather, died when a train struck their car at the crossing. Community volunteers helped roughly 100 stranded passengers at the scene. Locals opened their homes. The campsite up the road offered hot drinks. In the months afterward, a member of the public reported that a train had passed over the crossing moments after they themselves had crossed it. The investigation found no malfunction. The locals were not reassured. In Nottinghamshire, the Beech Hill crossing sits on the line between Gainsborough and Doncaster near Finningley. Flat country, open fields. On the 4th of December 2012, a train struck a car at the crossing. A young child in the car was seriously injured and later died in hospital. It was December. The winter sun hung low on the horizon. The halogen warning lights could not compete with the glare. The driver never saw them. The technology to fix this existed. LED wigwag lights had been trialled at Bentley Heath crossing in 2006. 6 years before the Beech Hill fatality, the replacement lights were available. They simply had not reached this crossing in time. Deep in the Cambridgeshire fens, Shippier Hill is one of the loneliest railway stations in Britain. In the year 2015, only 12 passenger entries and exits were recorded across the entire year. The station sits on the Breckland line between Cambridge and Norwich, surrounded by flat, drained marshland where long, straight railways cross long, straight drainage roads at right angles. On the 3rd of December 1976, a passenger train collided with a lorry on the level crossing near Shippier Hill. The train driver, Robert Hixon, was killed. 8 passengers were injured. The fens are full of crossings like this. The flatness that should make trains visible at great distance creates its own deception. Speed is impossible to judge across empty space. Robert Hixon saw the lorry from far away. He could do nothing to stop. Just 3 months after Hixon, another collision at another newly automated crossing, Beckingham in Nottinghamshire, east of the Great North Road between Newark and Gainsborough. The Trent Road public level crossing. The 16th of April 1968, a road vehicle struck by an express passenger train. 2 major automatic crossing disasters within 100 days. Hixon on the 6th of January, Beckingham on the 16th of April. The same era of automation, the same assumptions that drivers would understand systems nobody had taught them to use. After 1968, the rollout of automatic crossings ground almost to a halt. Near Lydney in the Forest of Dean, on the line between Gloucester and Chepstow, sits Naas Crossing. In 1983, it became the first automatic open crossing remotely monitored in Britain. No barriers, only flashing lights, monitored from miles away by a signaller who could not see the crossing itself. It was cheaper. It was designed for quiet country lanes, and the type would prove deadly. These crossings continued to be installed until the Lockington disaster in 1986 exposed the lethal reality of the design. Only one crossing of this type remains on the entire UK network today. We will come to it shortly. We come now to crossings that are not historic. They are current. Some of these are places where near misses still occur regularly. Some have only recently been closed or upgraded after decades of local campaigning. Network Rail data shows that over the past 4 years, 1,574 near-miss incidents have been recorded at level crossings across Britain. That number has increased by 16% over the same period. Farnborough, north in Hampshire, sits within walking distance of the local 6th Form College and the College of Technology. A heavily used crossing in a heavily populated area. In recent years, it became one of only 3 crossings in the country, so dangerous that it had to be physically staffed whenever trains were running, not automated, not left to the barriers and the lights. A human being standing beside it every single day, because the volume of young pedestrians and the speed of trains made anything else unacceptable. Local residents had demanded a bridge for decades. The bridge was eventually built, a fully accessible structure with lifts, but for years, the crossing was the only way between platforms. When the mathematics of risk required a person to stand beside a crossing every day that trains ran, the question hangs in the air. Why was it open at all? North of Cambridge on the Fen line to Ely, the village of Waterbeach has grown substantially with new housing developments. The crossing carries heavy local traffic and pedestrian use. CCTV footage captured an impatient cyclist who came within inches of being struck by a train after ignoring the warning signals and riding around the barriers. Network Rail released the footage, and it became one of the most widely viewed near-miss clips in Britain. A 2025 survey found that 1 in 3 people admitted being more careful crossing a road than crossing a railway. 87% of Generation Z respondents admitted to mistakes caused by phone distraction at crossings. In just one route alone, Network Rail's Wessex route, the last financial year saw 466 incidents of level crossing, misuse, and 28 near misses, a 24% increase in misuse incidents over the previous year. On the North Wales coastline between Llanfairpwllgwyn and Penmaenmawr, the crossing at Glan y Môr Elias sits where the railway runs between the mountains and the sea. CCTV footage showed a pedestrian casually walking across the crossing while a train was passing through. No urgency, no awareness. A human being strolling across live tracks. These Welsh coastal crossings are particular. The railway hugs the shoreline, cutting through communities that have existed since before the railway arrived. Footpath crossings connect homes to beaches, schools, and shops. People use them daily. Familiarity creates a casualness that the railway cannot forgive. A train on this stretch arrives at speeds that turn a casual stroll into a fatality in under 2 seconds. The Cambridgeshire and Norfolk Fens between Ely and March contain dozens of level crossings. Dead straight railway lines cross dead straight drainage roads at right angles, often without any barriers at all. Many are user-worked crossings where there is no automation whatsoever. Some have only a telephone for the user to call the signaller before crossing. Some have nothing but a sign. The number of these crossings is gradually being reduced, but parliamentary evidence confirms that level crossing accidents and fatalities have not significantly reduced for 30 years and represent a high proportion of all railway deaths in Britain. The farmers who work these fields cross the tracks daily. Their children walk to school across them. The crossings have become pollarded landscape, unremarkable and therefore unrespected. The land is flat. You can see a train from a mile away, but you can also misjudge its speed from a mile away. That is where the danger lives. And so we arrive at the last crossing, Rosary, near Keith in Moray in the northeast of Scotland. On the Aberdeen to Inverness line, rural, remote, the kind of crossing you would barely notice. This is the only remaining automatic open crossing remotely monitored on the national network in the entire United Kingdom. Last ones. The type of crossing born at Naas in Gloucestershire in 1983 and condemned by the Lockington disaster 3 years later. No barriers, flashing lights only, monitored by a signaller who cannot see it. Every other crossing of this type has been upgraded or closed. This one remains. It sits on a rural road in Moray, used by local traffic, by farmers, by people who have crossed it 1,000 times without incident and who may cross it 1,000 times more, but it is the last of its kind for a reason. The review that followed the Lockington crash established that this category of crossing produced collisions at a rate 20 times higher than half barrier crossings carrying the same traffic. It is still open, trains still pass over it, Drivers still cross it, and the lights still flash. Between those flashes, somewhere, there is still a window.